Alright, welcome to the top 100 UHC Intros version 4, the technical video, where I'll be discussing all sorts of things from the voting process to the amount of votes, the list itself, the point system used, random stats, all sorts of stuff. I'll be going to my After Effects files at the end to show you how I made the video, all that fun stuff. So if you want to discuss any of that stuff, please feel free to do so in the comments here. If you want to discuss the list itself from 1 to 100, check the link in the description, and that'll send you over to the main video where you can discuss that list. So for the technical video, I wanted to start off with how I ran the intro submissions in the voting process. I did things very similar to how AJ did last year for submitting intros. I put just a link up, said submit all the intros you want, and we ended up with 377 submitted intros, to which I put in here, and then I went and verified that the links worked. Shout out to Jamie, who found a few links that had gone dead. I guess some people, there were like 2 or 3 intro creators that deleted their channels in between when I verified them and then when the voting post went live. So shout out for Jamie to that. But that was pretty much the same as last year. Now the voting process got a lot of controversy this year because when I saw the list last year, there were 2 things I noted to AJ that I thought really needed fixing. One was the point system, which I'll talk about later, but the second was that a lot of rounds that are not well known or aren't necessarily from the Reddit did not have good representation on the top 100 intros list. And granted, while a lot of those intros weren't up to par, I think there were a lot of intros that were really good that just didn't get ranked high on the list simply because people didn't know about them. My example specifically from last year was the Mazette 5 intro. Mazette is a French recorded round. That's probably not how you say the name. I'm butchering it. My bad. But I personally think it's one of the better intros out there, like overall. And while you can disagree with me, agree with me on it, the fact that it ended up 70th, 80th, around that kind of area really bothered me. I was like, this is a great intro that is far better than a lot of the intros I was seeing in 50s and 60s and even 40s. And I think a lot of that was just due to people skipping it because they were like, I don't know it, I don't care about it, I'm just going to vote for the intros I know and I want. Keep it easy, boom, done. So the big controversy with my process this year came from that anonymization process I suggested to AJ last year. Basically what I did is, after I got all the intros in here, I alphabetized them, lined up 373 numbers, did this little handy randomized range thing, and that gave me a completely random list of intros numbered 1 to 373. Evolution 15 was submitted later at 374. And this anonymization process had a lot of, I think, strengths and weaknesses, and so I'm going to talk about some of the complaints I got and kind of discuss my reasoning behind it. Overall, of course, my reasoning for the anonymization was to completely even out the playing field for all intros involved, to give no bias to any whatsoever. So I guess my first complaint I received was the annoyance. Just wasn't enough time to go through the list. You know, there were 374 intros. People didn't want to wade through the entire list, going through a bunch of intros they knew they didn't like. Just to find the ones they did like. And I do think that's a fair point. I think, you know, in my multiple years on the subreddit, there are definitely intros that I already know I don't like at all. And so I could have easily eliminated those if they were just alphabetical. But my counterpoint to that would be that last year AJ gave 5 days to vote in total, and I gave 7 in an effort to boost that amount of time people had to kind of go through the whole list and figure it out. And people were complaining that a week wasn't enough time, and when I pointed out that last year was only 5 days, they kind of realized that, oh, wait, he's giving us extra time. And on top of that, I really don't think if I had given extra time it would have changed much. As you can see here, the voting opened on July 13th, and I closed it on July 20th, and you can see all these votes came on the last day simply because in the Discord servers I was in, I sent out a reminder like, hey, 24 hours left to vote, make sure you do, and that really lit a fire under people's butt and got them to, you know, actually vote. Not the fact that, you know, the week-long time had nothing to do with it. They got it done in the last few hours. So I don't think time was a big issue. Another complaint was, I know which intros I want to vote for. I don't want to wade through a list just to find the intros I already am going to vote for. And my response to that was, well, that's exactly why I anonymized it. If you are going into this knowing, all right, I'm just going to vote for these 10 intros, call it good, whatever, I'm done, then you're not giving, the other, say, 75 intros even that you haven't seen a chance. And like I said, I think there are a lot of intros that are very, very well done that aren't necessarily in people's current knowledge. And so that was exactly why I anonymized it. The third point was that when people submitted their votes, I made people use the numbers instead of the names of the intros. And that was a big annoyance for people, even after they'd gone through the list. One person said to me basically, I hate the fact that I have to use the numbers because I've gone through them all and I wrote them out in words and now I don't remember what numbers they are. And my counter, of course, was use the text editing program like Notepad, which is very simple and which is exactly what I did, and that'll save you a lot of time. But more importantly, I think that if I had allowed people to use just the words, it would defeat the point of the anonymization, and I'll get to it later, but there were actually quite a few people who did submit just the words. Some of them were very, very heavily biased. Most of them weren't, and about half the people who did submit text-based answers, when I told them, like, hey, you need to do the numbers, they gladly did. And so I'm glad I did that. I think if I had allowed words, the names of the rounds, it would have just very easily been like last year. The anonymization really wouldn't have done anything and would have defeated that whole purpose. And a little extra note just for me personally, when I'm managing 374 intros, as you'll see later, by having people submit the numbers, it was actually just a lot easier to go through and what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, just to manipulate the points and make sure the points weren't being miscounted by me. Just have the computer do it with formulas and stuff. So less, user error involved overall, which is something I'm excited about. Finally, I did want to mention, shout out again to Jamie. Jamie actually went through the entire list and made a playlist on YouTube that he posted to Twitter with all the intros in number order, which I think helped a lot of people go through the list easier. I do think that by doing that, a few people may have voted, just for the intros they liked and not given any others a chance. And also, I did end up caving on the last day just because there were so little votes that I did actually end up posting this list here in one of the bigger RR Discords just to make people's lives easier. And I do regret that I did that. I really probably shouldn't have. But at that point, there were just so little votes that intros with one first place were getting into the top 100 list. So it needed to be done at that point. I'm going to move on here over to the votes itself. So there were a grand total of 74 votes submitted. Obviously not a very high number. And of those, there were 46 total valid votes. All these red ones were invalid. There were 15 that I read out. 13 of them for using text and the names of the intros, and then 2 because this person submitted nothing and this person just submitted this, which is clearly not anything important, so those went away. And then there were 13 total dark red ones that I deleted. These 10 for collusion. These 10 basically all put the same intro at number 1, used alt accounts, and names of people who didn't actually vote when I contacted them. So those were all deleted very swiftly, and then these 3 later, just because they put the same 3 answers 3 times, and that's it, and you can't do that. That's not how the rules work. So none of them would have stood simply because of the rules anyway, so no big deal there. Of the 13 red votes of people that submitted text lists, 6 of them did end up coming back and resubmitting the numbers, so shout out to those 6 people, you know who you are. Well done. Now, with only 46 total votes, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little disappointed. The amount of work on the back end that has gone into this to have only 46 people, care enough to actually vote on this was really just heartbreaking almost for me. I do understand why. I think it's been mentioned many times, the community's dying. It's just not one on the Reddit, and since I did everything through Reddit, I think that that may have gotten some people lost. and two, I just don't think people care as much at this point. You know, just in general about recorded rounds, and so recorded round intros kind of suffer the same fate. And finally, there were 374 intros on the list. There were about 350 something last year, so there really weren't that much of an increase from last year. But once again, looking at 374 intros all at once is a lot. One thing that could maybe be done, if there is a list next year, I doubt there will be, but if there is one, you could maybe do like multiple rounds of like 20 intros each. I don't know how that'd work though. Just because I can find a lot of flaws with that in my head right now. But hey, you know, I'm open to suggestions, and if I do end up passing it on to someone, maybe they'll have some better ideas than I did. Now, on to the top 100 intro list itself. Ta-da! This is the grand list. In the video itself, you can find this number, the amount of points, the name, current rank, position change, intro creator, art render, music, and everything else I'm going to talk about here. I'm pretty happy with how the list turned out. Even with only 46 votes, I think the list overall was a very good representation of good intros. I think it was a lot better than in years past. I think there are a few that I heavily disagree with, but overall, I'm pretty darn satisfied with how the list came out. And I've hidden all intros below 100, just because I don't want, you know, there to be people to know how close their intro got. If an intro organizer or creator approaches me, I will gladly tell you where your intro is finished, because I think being transparent is good, and I would like to know where my intro is finished, which I asked both Burning and AJ in last year's. So if you do, just ask. I'll let you know. But if you're not, you know, directly related to that intro, I'm not gonna disclose that information. In total, with the list, I think it was really cool. We had a grand total of 40 new intros on the list, which is quite a lot. It's almost half the list is new intros, which one could be just coming from a bias towards new intros, but two, I really just think it shows, you know, an overall growth in how people have made intros over time, and how the newer ones are really good. There are a few intros that are interesting that they're new. For example, one of the ones I noticed was Pathfinder 3 coming in at 30th. Wasn't even on the list last year, and managed to pull a 30th place this year, which was pretty interesting to me. I did note that pretty much all of the intros with animations got ranked pretty well this time around, so I think people kind of had a more bias towards animations this time. After the 40 that are new, there were a total of 16 that actually went up in position and 44 that went down. Of course, it's more likely that an intro will go down in position than go up. But of the three best that went up in position, you have Addiction 10, who jumped up 68 places. You have Mazette 5, who jumped up 50 places. And then, of course, you have Frenzy 4, who jumped up 35 places. And on the way down, we had Nuzlocke coming in at a negative 70 positions. We had Ambition 15 and Cataclysm 8 both dropping 57. Those were the biggest changers overall. Next, I want to kind of talk about the point system, because I did have a different point system than last year, and you can actually see it here. This year I did a 20, 17, 14, 12, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Don't do that. Compared to the 10, 9, 8, 7 all the way down to 1. That's gone on in the last few years. I pointed it out to AJ last year just because I have run with different point systems. I actually experiment with point systems a lot in a lot of different things. You can ask pretty much any of the people I talk to that I'm just an absolute stats and point system junkie. And so for me, the 10-to-1 point system, the biggest flaw I have with it is that a 10th place only gets 1 point, 9th only gets 2, 8th only gets 3, which just isn't a lot. When there are 374 intros, let's say you submit 3 top 10 lists, that's 30 intros, right? Those are the best, even less than 10% of intros that you submitted, and it gets 1 point, which, if one intro, say, even gets 5, what place is the 6th place, that equals 5 10th places, which didn't make sense to me, right? If there are that many intros, shouldn't all the ones you submit be weighted pretty well? So that was the goal with this point system, right? Even making it onto someone top 10 list gets you 5 immediate points versus 0. It's a big jump up that allows kind of a more boost towards frequency rather than just pure high number of submissions, right? Instead of having one intro come in at, say, get one first place and have 10, one intro get 10 10th places being the same. Now you have it weighted where if one intro gets one first place, they only need 4 10th places to catch up. And to show one of the simulations I ran, I included it on this list. This is the one I posted to the subreddit. And obviously the problem with the simulation is there weren't real votes involved, so this was just me manipulating numbers pretty much at this point. You can see this is how last year's system would have worked. This is the system I went with, and the other point system I had suggested, and kind of how it changed. And I liked the 20 to 5 one better because, as you can see, it gave just a little boost to ones with more frequency, right? This one showed up 39 times versus 32, so it passed it. This one showed up 34 times versus 25, so it passed it. The 15 to 5, I think, would have also been a good point system. The problem for me is that it puts too much emphasis on frequency. Almost to the point where, like, it's more beneficial to get 3 or even 4 10th places versus 1 first. The 10th places are going to win, and that it was almost too much of a change for me. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. So overall, I'm really satisfied with how this point system worked out. And I actually did run a simulation on how it would have turned out if these points stayed the same. As last year, I think the biggest changes would have been New Dawn passing Instinct, Frenzy passing Chunk Loader, and just a few others here and there. But most of them, like you can see here, Pathfinder 7 beating Phobia 10. Phobia 10 had 2 more submissions, so it would have been lower, on the old list. So I'm glad with. I really am glad with how the point system turned out. And as you can see, the lowest intro to make the top 10 list or top 100 list got 32 points, which is almost 2 whole first places. So I was pretty satisfied with how the point system turned out. How I also ran it was, in previous years they've done points and then tie breaks was based on how many times the intro was submitted in an effort to try and get people to not submit the same intro 40 times, so I'd have to go through that list, over and over and over again. I then went off of frequency. I really, really wanted to emphasize how frequency is more important than just getting really high. Because I really do think, if 40 people are going to put you on a list of top 10 out of 100, then that's more important. Finally, I wanted to end this Google Sheets segment with the random stats section. I went through the rounds, the intro creators, and then a cool little list I'll explain in a little bit. So for the rounds itself, we had 53 total rounds get an intro on the list, which is really good. That means on average less than 2 intros per round that made it. New Dawn and Phobia came in clutch with 5 each. Addiction and WMC, of course, came in with 4. And if you look, most of the top ones are pretty darn well-known rounds. And a lot of that has to do with, 1, they had just a lot of intros submitted, but 2, these are really, really high-quality intros. But there were a few little rounds here and there that got, snuck an intro in. Mazette got one in. INB4 snuck one in. Tell the Tale, a very new round, got one in. So that was very happy overall. Now, in terms of intro creator, there were actually 5 intros, as you can see down here. 5 intros with 2 creators. So there were a total of 105 intro creator points. We had a total of 41 intro creators make this list this year. As you can see, Mr. Sonic Fan just absolutely destroyed it this year with more than 1/10 of the intros on the list going to him. And of course, Brick, who I did change the name to his current name, also managed to pull 5 in. And of course, shout out to these 4 for also getting 5 in. It's hard to get 1 intro on the list, let alone 5. That's just, that shows they're just putting in really, really good work. On top of this, I wanted to give shout-outs. We have actually 7 new intro creators who managed to pull 1 intro on this list, which I think is just really, really cool for them. So shout-out to Lux and AJ Steele and Bushy Half and Codwy, Organized Madness, Taper Turtle, and Quill, who each got their very first intro onto the top 100 intros list. So good job for them. And finally, from the random stats, we have the average of rounds with 5 or more entries. This was all recorded rounds where people submitted 5 or more intros to be voted on, and then how many points they got on average. As you can see, Back in Time just destroyed this. This comes from the fact that Back in Time 4 and 5 both finished in the top 20, Back in Time 3 finished in the top 40, and while both Back in Time 2 and 1 didn't actually make the top 100, just because those got so many points, it just weighted that average so ridiculously high. And you can see the top 4 are all very, very established recorded rounds. Risk and Reward, New Dawn, and WMC are 3 of the oldest on the subreddit. And as you work your way down, we can see here is kind of the bottom list. It was very, very shocking to me that not a single Mindcrack intro got a single point. They were the only ones with 5 or more entries that got no points, which was very, very surprising to me. But as you can see, you know, the bottom ones here are all either non-Reddit, or they are, you know, UHC highlight intros or from an RR Clash, which are usually very, very short intros, not with a lot of fancy effects. So kind of the goal with the anonymization was to hopefully give these guys a little boost up. It didn't work as well as I anticipated with these big hitters, as evidenced by, you know, most of them not even getting 10 points. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how the list turned out. I wish I would have seen, you know, any of these groups make the list, but that is good. All 10, yeah. And, you know, and the last point I guess I'll point to that is intro quality might not necessarily be as high with these guys. It also might have something to do with not being Reddit, but I think overall, it's just these guys just have such a high quality of intros that they did very, very well. And with that, that's all I wanted to go through in the Google Sheets. And so now I'll transfer you over to After Effects. Go team! Alright, welcome to Technical Video Part 2. We have joined After Effects for the video composition. That's the word I'm looking for. So basically, I just wanted to show you what actually went into physically making the video. One, I started to spice things up a little bit. In the past, the transitions between numbers, like, you know, to show, oh, number 100, number 99, number 88, were pretty simple. Black text, black background, white text. Burning had a little fancy circle that went around. I decided to spice it up. Basically what I did is a long time ago I was working on a practice intro that I wanted to make, and I made kind of a bunch of this stuff, stuff like this that I could use for an intro transition, right? Something like this where, oh yeah, look, all sorts of cool transitions that happen. Oh yeah, I'm so cool. Basically, I went and made each of these shape layers by hand, as you can see here. Pretty simple. Most of them were, you know, different shapes, lots of repeaters. But I made the shapes, I made the slides a long time ago, and I decided, you know what, screw it, let's finally put them to use, which resulted in things like number 82 here. Now, I had to go in and basically off-color them. I took a number and added masks and stuff so that every time a new one came on, its opacity increased just a little bit, as you can see, like right here. You can see there's the 3 different layers. So you get this kind of cool little thing, and then it disappears. The transition effect, or like the sound effect itself, just downloaded offline. Nothing super fancy there. But this, I think this part took me the longest to do, because if you notice, each of the numbers actually has a different color, and I did not repeat them. For all of them except maybe a few, for at least 5, you won't have like the same kind of color back to back, no green to green, no red to red, that kind of deal. So this part really took a long time, and the format was really simple. I used my 4 slide transitions I've made, the hexagon, the radial, the slide, and the vertical, and the 5 shapes I've made. And then I, you know, started at 1, I think it went 1, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 5 on accident, and I just kind of repeated that. And same with the slides, I picked an order, repeated them, and since they were, you know, 4 and 5, they offset a little bit. But that's how I made all the numbers. There's some really cool YouTube tutorials on how to make the shape backgrounds. I'll post a link for that one. The transitions I made myself. The slides I made myself, but those were also fairly simple. Yeah, most of them were just like, you know, a shape growing, and then you mask it with the shape layer, and it works out really, really nice. Very, very nice. Yeah, see, alpha mats. Lots of alpha mats. So basically, after I made all the numbers, you can see I have 6 folders here. I did them in blocks of 16, I think, or for each slide transition. Yes. So basically, I made all these numbers. That took by far the longest amount of time. And then I went and I downloaded all the intros. All of the intros. There's so many intros. And a few I had to cut from videos. Like if the intro video wasn't out anymore. Or some like Phobia 7, for example. The intro video is a modified one that they didn't actually use. So I just had to go and grab all those, cut them up, and then I got to the fun bit. So let's take intro 17. Basically, I just took the transition I had made, followed by the intro itself, you know, starting up. Shout out to Daffs for this intro and being my guinea pig here. And then I made just a really simple, you know, white text, black background. Same thing that AJ and Burning both did before. This little block of text is a little different than before. It's usually been the name, points, who made the intro, sometimes the music. I think AJ did the music. I don't remember if Burning did. But I decided to add 2 things. I added who did the renders, art, or animations, because I feel like that's pretty important to an intro, and those people should get credited. And then Fairy Juice actually suggested this last year. This little thing right here is the change in position from the previous year. So last year Fission 3 was in 21st, this year it got 17th, therefore it got a little +4, just for people who wanted to keep track of that. Okay, so once I had done this part was pretty easy, lots and lots of cut and paste at this point. The biggest thing was I had to change the composition length to fit each one. But basically after that, I went to, I believe, here we go, this beautiful, beautiful thing of 108 108 bits, and I put them all together. I separated them by 1 second each just to give a little black screen time, and then of course I made a recording just to kind of discuss things, talk about it at the front, and then at the end I went through and added 5 honorable mentions. AJ did 6 last year, but these are all intros that I either voted for or didn't quite vote for, but were really close. And this is the only error I made that, as far as I'm aware of. I forgot to scale this up because it was 720p, so oops on my part. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the technical stuff. If people want me to go even more in depth, I can. Don't think that will be needed though, because it was pretty basic. Just took a lot of time. I think total time in this After Effects project, oh geez, the numbers took a good few hours. The intros took a few hours. Putting them all together took an hour or 2. Probably looking at least 14 or 15 hours to make the video. And then another hour or 2 to download the videos, the intros. And then of course the old things took 5 or 6 hours to make the slides and stuff because I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, so that's this. That's pretty much it for the After Effects part. I haven't mentioned it anywhere, but I did do kind of a lame thing and put my own intro as an honorable mention. I should probably address that at some point, so I'm going to here. BaconCrafty26. I did put as an honorable mention, and yes, I did make it and make everything about it. I was very proud of it, and did vote for it in the competition. I have not voted for my intros in years past, but decided that this year I felt like this one was good enough to make my list at a very, very, very low place. But none of my intros made the list again, so I was kind of bummed about that. And since AJ did honorable mentions, I'd figure I'd throw one of them in there. Because I worked hard on it, and I think it's good. Oops. But yeah, 5 honorable mentions, 100 intros. Total time came out to be, what, an hour 33 minutes. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out. yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching the technical video. Yeah, thanks for watching the technical video. Don't have really much more to say than that. But yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And feel free to discuss anything I've mentioned in the comments, whether positive or negative. I'm here to discuss. So yeah, thanks for watching.